Vaya Chantananda Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada, son, founder, Acharya Srila Prabhupada, Ananda Goti Vaishnava Vrinda Acharya Srila Hoyra Thakur, Param Se Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivedanta Shri Shri Radha Krishna Govinda Govinda Sayam Gun Radha Gunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Turan Ki Jai Jagat Goswami Ki Jai Ramai Ki Jai Shrimati Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Samhita Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda. All glories to you, Son of the Devotees, all glories to you, Son of the Devotees, all glories to you, Son of the Devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga, Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. So Om Gana Timidanga Shah, Vedanjana Shlakaya Chakshur, Meditam Yena, Tasmai Shri Namaha. So we're going to talk about everybody's identity and the process to realize your identity, which is the supreme occupation of mankind. But before we actually get into the details about it, we got to talk about something called epistemology. That's a big word for all of you. And epistemology means the study, just like ology, epistemology, means the study of knowledge. How do you know what you know? I mean, someone may think, oh, that's really easy. Seeing is believing. Well, you can see a lot of things that are not real. And you could not see a lot of things that are real, right? I mean, there's a mirage in the desert. And I have driven through the desert sometimes, not here in North Carolina, there's no desert, but in Arizona. You know what Arizona means? The zone of dryness. Arid zona. Think about it for a second. Arizona. So Arizona means it's, anyway, you got it. The dry desert. Most of it is desert. And it looks like the moon. That's another subject. So you drive through and you see this mirage. You say, oh, water, water. And there's no water there. So there's different methods that people have of knowing what they're knowing. Sometimes their method is what my mommy told me. Well, when I was young, my mommy told me, sorry about that, Sanskrit language, but anyway, my Mataji told me that there was Santa Claus. And so every Christmas, and I wasn't even from a Christian family. But anyway, so I believe that there was Santa Claus, and that at a certain time in the morning, he would come sliding down the chimney. Now, our chimney was bigger. Inside the chimney was bigger, but you know, inside it was, boy, it can't be how he's depicted. So anyway, so I believed it. And you know, I'd wake up on Christmas morning and there were like stockings filled with little goodies and things like that, and said, oh, thank God for Santa Claus. And even nowadays, you have the scientists who are depicting where Santa Claus is at a particular time. Completely imaginary, isn't it? You go on the web and you can say, well, right now it's in Hillsborough. Oh, just missed it. So it really, you know, it sounds funny, you know, believing what your mother told you, but that's how or why most people believe what they believe in. You know, people say, well, I was born in this religion, that religion, family, or whatever. I'm a redneck. Sorry about that. But I won't tell you what that is. So, or it's a family tradition. And that's why people are of a particular religion, because generally, I mean, there's exceptions to that. I mean, I joined Krishna Consciousness not because of what my mother said, but because of what my mother told me not to do. Because my mother told me to be like Adi Purusha, you know, to go to the school, become a professor, become famous, and make a six-figure income. So I was sort of like the opposite of that sort of epistemological approach. So Anyway, there's seeing is believing, there's hearing from an authority, which is pretty good if you got the right authority, and there's also history. But somehow or other we find that our history books aren't really precise. Like the history books in America, for example, they talk about how the Europeans came and they conquered over the poor savages and everything. Like, well, there was a slaughter and everything. You know, the truth is there was a slaughter. No, the real truth is coming out after 400 years. Actually, more than 400 years. So you can't really believe the book that you read either. You know, who do you believe, and you know, how do you, especially when dealing with spiritual knowledge. And some people, they just speculate, you know, it feels like that's the way it may be. So we got to really figure out, you know, how we're going to believe, or come up with a philosophy and what we believe in. And as this picture depicts, we have, that's good. We have four faults because we're conditioned souls. And, you know, we have imperfect senses, like we mentioned before. We make mistakes. One person told me the other day the only mistake they ever made was that they thought they had made a mistake. He was a little proud. Name should remain secret. And then we cheat others like that, and we are an illusion. Like, for example, you know, we may think I may think that I'm this body. That's an illusion. I may think I'm American. I may think so many things, but that's all illusory. All right, so because we have these four defects, we're really not a good source for perfect information. Perfect information means something that doesn't change. Like Krishna says in the Gita, Nasato vijate bhavo nabhavo vijate sataha, uviyo drishtavantas tvanios tatvadarshini. That reality of those things that continue to exist, those are tattvas. Tattva means like something that exists. A soap bubble is not a tattva because it doesn't continue to exist. It has some reality, but it's not substantial reality. We're talking here about substantial reality. So who are we going to depend on? Our mother, our politicians, our father? You know, we got a problem there. And Krishna Consciousness, there's different varieties of knowledge too. Of course, we understand that Krishna Consciousness is considered the postgraduate study of God. But even before you get to the postgraduate study, you got to go to the kindergarten study of God. You know, ABC. What is ABC? You're not the body. Most people don't understand that. They think that when we tell them, from a Krishna conscious perspective, that you're not the body, they think, oh, that's very sectarian. Just like I was listening to one memory of Prabhupada, and one person asked Prabhupada, is it possible to be reborn in the same body again? What? Sounds like those bones shall rise again. You know, that's why in the Western world, basically, because they bury people, or don't bury people, they bury bodies. Because that's, if they were to cremate you, then there'd be nothing to put together. You know, and that would be pretty wild. Anyway. You know, I definitely don't want to be around when the cemeteries open up and everybody comes out. Actually, I was around one time when that happened. It was in New Orleans. It was in New Orleans during Katrina. Katrina, the roads, everything was flooded, and the cemeteries there are basically above ground, most of the coffins, because the water table was right below the ground. You know, just got 3 inches, 4 inches below the ground, and everything was floating. I said, this is not the day of judgment for me. So anyway, so you got to know ABCs before you can go to the postgraduate study. Prabhupada said Krishna Consciousness is the postgraduate study. And even within Krishna Consciousness, we have different books that are different levels, that bring one to different levels of understanding. And initially you have the Bhagavad Gita, the first part of the Bhagavad Gita, then you get on to the last part. Sarva Dharma Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Braja. And then after that, you go to the Srimad Bhagavatam and other books like the Nectar of Devotion. Everything's there in the books. And after that, you go to the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is the postgraduate study. So you've got to gradually go up. So, and another problem, here's another problem. We're just presenting problems here right now, so you don't get depressed. Another problem is that if you don't have the right desire, then Krishna says in the Gita, Mata Smritir Jnana Vipomanancha, I'm giving people remembrance, forgetfulness, and knowledge according to their desire. So if you don't really want to surrender to God, you won't know Him. Actually, Bhaktimama Vishanati, Yavanyas Jasmi Tatva. There's the word Tatva again. Only by bhakti can I be known. So, Buddho Yam Navijanati. So, if someone has the wrong, let's say, desire, or wants to cheat, or wants to bewilder others, or wants to bewilder himself or herself, then you get imperfect intelligence, and even imperfect data. Data means what you take in through the senses or the extended senses. So there's Krishna giving intelligence, remembrance, and forgetfulness. So, of course, we understand that the perfect way of understanding is through what we call the descending process. Descending process means if you hear from someone who is perfect, then at that particular point, then your knowledge is perfect, assuming the person is speaking the truth. But obviously a perfect person would be speaking the truth. And so, therefore, we have something called a disciplic succession. And as Krishna was speaking to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, or as recorded in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna mentions Idam Param Para Pratam Imam Raja Shayo Buddhahu, that there's a disciplic succession. And Krishna even mentions in the Gita that the disciplic succession sometimes gets broken. The chain is as strong as its weakest link. So that disciplic succession, where Krishna originally taught the Bhagavad Gita to the sun god, who taught to Vipaswan Manu and Ikshvaku, etc., that was broken, so Krishna had to come down and speak it again. So we have to find someone who is in an unbroken chain of disciplic succession coming from Krishna, because knowledge, or Dharma, let's describe what Dharma is. Dharma is actually the inherent quality of an object. It doesn't simply mean duty. It means that what sustains something. So, Dharmam tu sakshat, Bhagavat pranitam. Dharma can only come from Krishna. I can't come up with my own Dharma. I can, but it's not Dharma. It's Upadharma, or Vidharma. It's not something that's applicable. Just like people talk sometimes about Sanatan Dharma. Sanatan Dharma means, it's sort of like repeating the same concept. You know, Dharma would be something that's eternal. Real Dharma would be something that's eternal. So Sanatan Dharma means eternal Dharma, basically. So basically, in the Krishna Consciousness movement, we can designate ourselves as Sanatan Dharmis. You know, sometimes people think, oh, you must be Hindus. That's a whole other class, which we're not going to give tonight. But we're actually following Sanatan Dharma, eternal practices and eternal religion and eternal knowledge that is taught by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, and also we're known as Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis, to be equal. So, of course, we have an example in our Krishna Conscious movement of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who is in the disciplic succession, coming down from Krishna, and of course, Krishna appears in this day and age, over 500 years ago, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had his initial followers, such as the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, and their followers, such as Srinivasa Acharya and Shaimananda and others, all the way down through the present day and age to His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. So that's how we know that knowledge is perfect. because they are bringing the Vedic knowledge, which is originally given by Krishna to Lord Brahma, in a perfect fashion to us. Now, one may question, which Vedas should we accept? This is another interesting topic. Because some of the Vedas have not been passed down in disciplic succession. I was just reading the works of Jiva Goswami, and he said, other than the Bhagavat and the Vishnu Purana, which are two of the 18 Mahapuranas in our heritage, these other Puranas have been changed or added to or things taken out. So it's important to keep in one's mind the concept of disciplic succession. Because even if you have some literature and it hasn't been passed down through disciplic succession, it's going to be changed after some time. Because like, I think many of you played that telephone game when you were young. Of course, that's not literature, obviously. But things get changed. Copy to copy to copy to copy. That's why in computers you have something called error correction. Anyone's heard about that? It works in computers? You have error correction. Because naturally, even within electronics, which are supremely powerful in this world, there's errors that are introduced. So you have, so part of the programming, part of the computational activity has to be correcting errors, checking to see if there's any errors. I mean, we'll get into the detail how it's done. But so you can imagine with people who are far more fallible than computers. Sorry if I'm insulting people right now, but I do have faith in Google Maps. Except when they lead you to drive into a lake or something like that. Yeah, actually, I was driving the other day, and Google Maps told me to turn left somewhere, and it actually had me turning into this. Hillsborough has this very nice walk. You understand? It had me turning into the walkway, which I didn't do, obviously. So, anyway, there are so many imperfections, so we have to accept even Vedic literatures and understanding Vedic literatures. Even if you have, let's say all the Vedic literatures somehow or other hypothetically were in their original pristine state. You still need guidance how to understand the Vedic literatures because they're multifarious. That's described in the Mahabharata. What is that verse? Tarko, Pradishta, Shruti, Na, Vivina. There's so many different varieties of Vedic literatures. There's, as they say, different shlokas for different folks. So if people are in the mode of ignorance, there's a Vedic literature for you. Yes? Go once a month and offer a goat to the goddess Kali. Haribo. Mamsa Kali, whisper in the goat's ear. Next life, it's me, my dear Bakri. That's it. Goat. Figure that out. So anyway, next life, it's me. So, do we follow that injunction? Well, I don't. I like to keep goats alive, you know. We love goats, not to eat them, but pet them. So therefore you have to know how to apply. Even if everything is bona fide, you have to know how to apply. Like Prabhupada said one time, that the Vedic literatures are like a pharmacopoeia. For those of you who don't know what that means, it means a pharmacy. Like if you go into Walmart, the pharmacy, you say, well, that medicine looks great. Well, give me a little bit of that and that. I like the color on that medicine. I think you'll get in trouble after some time. Or else you'll be intoxicated. So you have to have it prescribed by a bona fide physician and given to you by the pharmacist. You know, it's controlled stuff. So the same thing with Vedic literatures. There may be some Vedic literatures that deal with intimate pastimes of Radha and Krishna. You know, Krishna kissing Radharani, Radharani kissing Krishna. Yeah, but it may not be for you. So that's on the other end of the spectrum. You know, you have the goat on one end of the spectrum, and you have Radha and Krishna intimate pastimes on the other end. So we're usually somewhere in between those two extremities. So Anyway, so that's why we need the guidance of the spiritual master. And he engages one, not only gives one the philosophy, but engages one in practical service according to one's psychophysical nature. I was listening to a class yesterday, probably say the business of the spiritual master is to always chastise the disciple. Prabhupada did that. You know, one time there was a devotee, his name was Surabhi Prabhu, and he had designed the temple of Vrindavan. And everyone was saying, what a good job you did, what a good job. And Prabhupada chastised him. Prabhupada said, it's my business to chastise. Spare the rod, spoil the disciple. Anyway, so the guru trains up the disciple according to the disciple's psychophysical nature. And of course, Prabhupada came from the spiritual world. He's a Shaktavesh avatar. Not just a guru, he's a acharya with a capital A, sent down by Krishna to basically write books that Prabhupada said would be the law books, as you see on the slide there. Law books for human society. So we do have some problems. Of course, we just touched upon epistemology, but some problems are, it's Kali Yuga. And there's Krishna there, that there was the battle occurred, etc. But he's not coming down to do battle right now. He's actually, he's coming down. Sango Pangastra Parshadam, Yagyaya Sankatanam Prayar, Yujanka Yusamedasa. He's appearing as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he's killing the demoniac spirit. But still, it's pretty bad. Kali Yuga means the principles of religiosity, truthfulness, cleanliness, mercifulness, and austerity are diminishing. Truthfulness a little bit, but I have my doubts about it after reading the news. I really have my doubts that there's basically any truthfulness left. So, it's Kali Yuga, and war, pestilence, and global warming, which you're experiencing today, which is kind of nice for us. It's not nice for Australia, which is having all these fires now, and smog in the air. It's not nice for India in many ways, but here we are enjoying life. We're not worried about the waters rising so high that New Golok will become a boat floating in the North Carolina Sea. But other places there's countries disappearing right now. And also, we are challenged by the three modes of nature. Sattva, Raja, and Tama. They just see goodness, one likes to study things. But there's a problem with goodness too. In goodness, you become conditioned by a sense of happiness. You think, oh, everything is wonderful in this world. Just like right now, it's nice weather. You forgot that a few days ago, you were freezing to death. Because yesterday I went walking to the park here. It was so crowded, there wasn't another parking place, and everyone had these big smiles on their faces. Isn't it wonderful? Every time I pass over, they said, isn't it wonderful? And, also I was in Maya too, so I was thinking it's wonderful. But so that's goodness, you're appreciating those things. But the modes of nature are in continual flux, so sometimes you get passion, I must have this, I must have that. Unlimited desire for opulence, money, and ignorance. I'm fried. Need to go to sleep, like that. And then also we have this problem with material love. For those of you who don't know, some of these pictures actually probably all the pictures come from this very nice book, which is available after the lecture for a decent price. It's called You Are Not the Body. So this book actually teaches there's an advertisement, teaches the essentials of Krishna Consciousness in a nutshell. And I've had many Gurukulis tell me they wish they had this book when they were young, because after 5 years of Gurukul, they still didn't understand Krishna Consciousness. Not your They just started with memorizing a whole bunch of verses. But it's more than that. So there's another challenge called, material love. Anyway, because we're confusing and think every other entity is the body. not realizing there's a soul there. Of course, one who's a Krishna conscious loves everybody. But that doesn't distinguish according to the body. Doesn't think, oh, that's an ugly person. You know, just like if you see let's say talk about Australia. I was thinking about Australia. You see these poor koala bears that are being hurt? And everyone's going, oh. I'm not happy either. But if someone says, well, all these poisonous snakes are being killed. Jai, roll. You know, or all the insects are being killed. You know, so you discriminate, but Krishna doesn't think like that, and devotees don't think like that. Devotees think, Yastu Sarvani Bhutani Atmane Manapashati. They see all living entities equally, and they have equal compassion for all living entities, whether it be a bug, or a cat, or a dog, or whatever other creature. And then also there's these three gateways that we have to suffer with. Does anyone know what the three gateways do? What?
Lust, anger, greed.
Lust, anger, greed. You know, we hanker for something. You know, we're attacked by all these different symbols. You know, lust, I gotta have it, or her, or him. And anger, when you don't get it, Jayato Vishak, some Sangosteshu Vijayate, Sangat Sanjayate Kama, Kama Krota Vijayate, and greed wanting something. So, and we have uncontrolled senses. We walk through the supermarket of life. And I got this and that, you know. And especially in Kali Yuga, all these attractive features, just like the story in the Bhagavatam of a Jamil. A Jamil was a poor Brahmin boy, a nice Brahmin boy. And he saw some attractive girl being embraced by a man, you know, this is a low class. And he just couldn't keep that girl out of his heart or his mind, and he just went for it. So there's so many things. And Prabhupada said nowadays you see this everywhere, and all the billboards are everywhere. There's attractive things. And what to speak of the media coming at you. I mean, nowadays the young people, they're on their mobile phones for 7, 8, 9 hours a day on the average. It's terrible. Of course, you don't do that. He's Krishna conscious. And so, you know, I was even told, I hope I'm not embarrassing anyone, that when I'm giving the Sunday feast talk, 30% of the people are in the back looking at their mobile phones. Because we're going to, next time we're putting a camera in the back of the room and going to screen so you're looking at their mobile phone. So you got all these attractive. What's the difference if you answer your text an hour from now, right? I mean, if someone's dying, they'll figure a way to tell you. Right? So we're attracted by all these things, and then there's this whole principle of, you know, you really want something, you want it, and you get it, like you see these kids at Christmas. And they open up their Christmas gifts, and when they open up their Christmas gifts, and they get what they want, and they play with it for a little while, then they get frustrated, and they fight with each other. And then you have Personalism, which is another challenge. And then you have Personalism. So you have so many different philosophies and problems within this world. And Krishna in the Gita says that there's 4 types of people who don't approach him because of different problems. Namam Duskrutino Muda Prabhajante Dharadama Maya Pritagyana Surama Vamashvata. You know that verse? Try to learn it. So the 4 types. There are 4 types of people who don't want to be Krishna conscious. Mudhas. That means people who just like going to the bar on New Year's Eve. So just getting intoxicated, you know, to work, get intoxicated, go to the Christmas party, go to the New Year's party. That's mudha. Dharadama, lowest of mankind, people without sufficient brain substance, even human beings. And people, Maya Pratyagana, people are so proud at the University of Cambridge and Oxford. They think life comes from matter, or they think, you know, they're so proud. They think, how could Krishna ever marry 16,108 wives? I mean, I can understand 10. It's like that story we were talking about the other night with some devotees, 1,001 Arabian Nights. This man who married different women, but he killed them all the next morning. That may be practical. So, but 16,108 at once, not possible. So that, it's Maya Pritigyata. And also Asuram Bhava Mashrita. They're just demons. They want what God, they hear that Krishna marries so many girls. Why not me? Well, let them build a house for every girl. Get a job, So, these are the 4 types, and the 4 types who do approach Krishna, and hopefully we're one of those types. Chatur Bidal Bhajantimam. Those who are looking for knowledge, those who are inquisitive, innocent. These are innocent people. Those who are in distress, right? And even those who are looking for wealth. You find that a lot of people. Om Jai Jagadishari, please give money to me. So that's right. At least they're approaching God. Krishna says, the Bhagavatam, it says that akama, amoksha kama dharati, sarva kama, tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. Whether one is free of material desires, full of material desires, or desires of liberation, one should approach Krishna, right? And you have Dhruva Maharaj who wanted a kingdom greater than that of Lord Rama. But after he got Krishna, what happened? He said, I was looking for some pieces of broken glass, and I found a wonderful gem. So now we'll talk about our identity. First of all, everything in this world, to understand everything, including our bodies, everything we see, aham sarvasya prabhu matak sarvam pravartate, everything comes from Krishna. It's Krishna's energy. Also in the Bhagavatam and in the Vedanta Sutra, Janma Yasha Yataha. The absolute truth is that from which everything comes. So anything beautiful, attractive, wonderful we see in this world, it springs from but a spark of Krishna's splendor. So if you see a beautiful sunrise, that's nothing compared to Krishna's splendor. You hear a beautiful song, that's nothing compared to Krishna playing on his flute, right? So, and then we see Krishna is in everyone's heart, is the super soul. That's actually spiritual consciousness. And was that Ishwara Sarva Bhutanam, Videsha Arjuna Tishtati, Brahmayan Sarva Bhutani Yantra Udani Maya. That he's directing our wanderings in our heart, and he's waiting for us to turn back to him. And he's giving us, again, intelligence, remembrance, and love. Even between 2 little deer, or between deer people. I don't think anyone dresses like that anymore. That's from the last century. And we also have a subtle body and a gross body in Linga Sharira. Gross body means this thing, Panchamahabhuta, earth, water, fire, air, ether. And a subtle body of mind, intelligence, and false ego. And we have a soul, which is transcendental to these material bodies. And we're changing the bodies. This is all part of our identity we learn from Srila Prabhupada in the Vedic literatures. Vasamsi Jirnani, you know this verse? It's very nice. So just like one changes gives up old and useless clothes after they get torn, then we change bodies. And we change bodies based upon karma and desire. In the 8th chapter of the Gita, we find information that whatever you're thinking of the time of death, that determines what type of body you have. But there's another factor too. What yam yam vapi smaran bhavan, you know that? Yajate anti kalebram? No? Are you sure? Yam yam vapi smaran bhavan? Wow. He's great. So whatever you're thinking of at the time of death, but also what determines it is your desire. And what we have in the cartoon there is just like when you go to buy a car, what determines what type of car you're going to get is how much money you have and what you desire. So if I go to buy a car, then generally, I buy a Prius, a used Prius, 10-year-old Prius. But if I had more money, I buy a new what? Anyway. Tesla. So you see, so it's the money and the desire, right? And so it's the same thing with leaving the body. Let's say if you have a really good karma, karma's like the money stuff, really good karma, and you want to enjoy eating, you will be born as an Epicurean. That's someone who gets to visit all the restaurants, a reporter who visits restaurants all around the world. Recently there was someone like that who passed away, and writes about them. Would that be a nice life? No, because you'd be eating boba all the time. So, and if you have very little good karma or bad karma, and you like to eat a lot, well, big body. You get to eat a lot and enjoy, be an Epicurean. And the interesting thing about Krishna consciousness is there's no loss or diminution from one lifetime to another. See, we can give you something that you'll never lose, or Krishna can give you something that you'll never lose. And like you see here in this cartoon, it's an interesting cartoon about someone dying and being reborn, and then the little baby is chanting Hare Krishna. Not exactly right after he's born, but he's chanting Hare Krishna. I guess we better go a little quicker through this, so you don't want to spend all day long. And then we understand that this material world, this is all Sambandha Gyan. Understanding that Sambandha Gyan means your relationship with the material nature, your relationship with Krishna, your relationship with other spirit souls, your relationship with time, your relationship with karma, all this different information. And this material world is a reflection of the spiritual world, so whatever you see here is there in the spiritual world in its original, pure, pristine state. Whatever relationships are there. Obviously, there's no killing in the spiritual world. But whatever sort of rus you can get in this world, rus means like a taste of a relationship. So, as far as occupation, our occupation is to, first of all, serve Krishna, and first of all, the negative injunctions, follow the 4 regulative principles, which we mentioned before, and these are called the regulative principles of freedom in the Bhagavad Gita. Because when you follow them, you become free from being controlled by your senses. That's pretty nice. And free from bad karma, and free from all sorts of inauspicious things, and free from Kali, which is really nice. And then we understand and we worship the different incarnations of the Supreme Personality of God, and understanding Krishna's body is spiritual. We worship the deity in that respect. And then we engage our senses in Krishna's service. Because the same senses that we engage in material things can be engaged in Krishna's service. We can smell incense and flowers offered at Krishna's lotus feet. We can see beautiful deities, like you see Radha Golokananda. If you see Radha Golokananda, you just become overwhelmed with ecstasy. And they're reciprocating. Of course, Krishna reciprocates based on service. Yeyatamam prabhajante kamstataiva bhajamiham. So the more you serve Krishna, then he offers himself and reveals himself more. So you could serve Krishna with any of your limbs or any of your occupations, it doesn't matter. And offer everything to Krishna. We eat Krishna prasadam and engage in the Sankirtan, Lord Chaitanya's process of Sankirtan. And there's someone there in the lower right-hand corner you may recognize. She's a devotee here. But that's when she was very young. I don't think she's in the room right now, no. But she's listening or watching or whatever. And so, because Yadyahi Sankirtana Praya Yashanti Hi Samedasa. And then we serve the Sankirtan movement by all sorts of other means, making prasadam to distribute, making bhoga to offer to the deities and distribute, chanting the holy name, thinking of Krishna. The first rule and regulation is to always think of Krishna, and the second rule and regulation is to never forget Krishna. And then we act according to our nature. Krishna is very much understanding. In the Gita, he tells Arjuna to act according to his nature as a Kshatriya. So each and every one of us has a certain psychophysical nature. This is not the caste system. This is just fitting in according to what you like to do. So if you like to cook for Krishna, if you like to teach for Krishna, if you like to be an administrator, you could do that for Krishna. You like to shop for Krishna. Don't spend our money though. But anyway, very careful with the Amex card. So anyway, you could do all those things for Krishna. And then ultimately, you have a higher taste. Higher taste means in the material world, we're like eating the mud pies. You know what a mud pie? I had a friend when I was about 4 years old who made mud pies for me. The girlfriend, but not, that type of girlfriend. She was only 4. And she made mud pies, and it wasn't so delectable. So we get the real cake and nectar of Krishna consciousness, and ultimately we go back to home, back to Godhead, to enjoy Krishna in the spiritual world. And that's Krishna consciousness in a nutshell. So thank you very much. So we won't take questions today. All those to the Prabhupada. Well, we do something fun like that on New Year's, because everybody's getting ready for a party. So, all those Prabhupada. So, do we have any announcements or anything?
He's got a question.
You can take questions? Okay, one question.
Is it okay if I have 2 related questions? But I'm not sure if you can explain.
We charge double for the second. Yeah.
So, Gurudev, you were explaining about you showed even a picture of the Disciplic Succession.
Yeah.
So, the first question I was trying to ask or trying to understand is that if I look at Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he had many disciples, many followers.
Yes.
How come that his followers turn up into creating different movements that have different, for example, a different process of doing arati, different mantras? If they had the same guru, how come their practices become different?
That's a complicated question. Some of the branches that came off of Lord Chaitanya, of course, the initial followers, they're all bona fide. But some of the other branches that came after them, or after those who came after them, they deviated from the original teachings. So you really have to be careful. Although sometimes the details will be different between the bona fide branches. So if you ask me about a specific branch or a specific individual, I can answer specifically about them, but obviously not in front of everyone, because I don't want to criticize anyone. But sometimes some of those branches, like the branches in the trees, they break. The tree is bona fide, they break, right? I mean, there are all sorts of upasampradayas. Upasampradaya means a deviation from the original sampradaya. So, and we find Bhaktivinoda Thakur in the modern age, we're talking about the 1800s, really reestablished in a real sense the authenticity of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Because a lot of it had been lost. I mean, you had just to give an example, the Goswami families, many of them, their original person in their family was a follower of one of the Goswamis in Vrindavan. However, later on, they may have started to use the deity or the deity worship for financial aggrandizement. So that's a deviation. So one has to be careful, because as I mentioned before, disciplic succession could be broken. If we don't speak according to Guru, Shastra, and Sadhu, then we're actually breaking the disciplic succession at that point. It's very important. I mean, we can say things according to time, place, and circumstance, but there can be no deviation from the teachings of the Disciplic Succession. I mean, in some details of worship, yes, they can change. Like someone can offer 1 incense stick, another person can offer 3, another person can offer 10, not while I'm in the room. But you know, so these are details. But the Siddhanta should not change. Siddhanta means the perfect conclusion, perfect understanding, perfect practices. In other words, we chant 16 rounds, or we chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. You know, if I start to invent my own mantra, Om Krishna Goswami Namaha, then, you know, it's Krishna's name is there, but maybe it's some benefit. So, you know, that's the point. We can't change the process. Certain things can be adjusted. You know, sometimes a devotee may dress in Western clothes or dress in this way or that way. Certain things, everyone should have neck beads on. I was listening to class where Prabhupada was noticing one of the little children that had neck beads on. He said, "Why doesn't he have neck beads on?" You know, so things like that. These are essential items in our sampradaya. So you have a specific question?
Yes, so there's another related question to this one is that the way you mentioned that, like just like when you go to a pharmacy and you have different types of medicines and you need to have the right prescription to give the right one. So in the different pathways, how does a Bodhijiva, how does a soul decide which one is the right path for him? Like, and if there are other paths, is it necessary to know what it is for?
Well, first of all, yeah, a Bodhijiva means a conditioned soul. So just to translate what you just said. So how does he know? He must accept Guru. Tadviganartam Sadguru Meva Vigachet. It's essential. And the Guru engages the disciple according to his psychophysical nature, both in practical service and also in learning philosophy.
So deciding in the Guru, the path might have a Guru for the path itself, right? So that means when you decide the Guru, you need to decide the path itself. Is that true? Or is
no, deciding a Guru, you see who is actually a servant of his Guru. You know, that's the first priority is, you know, Samit Shroshina Brahmanishtam. Who is actually serving his Guru. You know, you don't necessarily pick the person who's most charismatic. A Guru may be charismatic, there's nothing wrong with it, but that's not one of the standards of judgment. One of the standards of the most important standard of judgment is that he's a servant of his spiritual master. He's putting straw in his teeth before his spiritual master, or carrying firewood from his spiritual master, or heard from his spiritual master. He's a servant. His life, in other words, his life is defined by service to his Guru. And look at Prabhupada. Prabhupada's whole life is defined, is understood through the lens of service to Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. There's nothing else there. There's nothing else there. Even when Prabhupada was married, then everything Prabhupada was doing was to carry out the mission, or arrange in the future to carry out the mission of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. That's really the standard. You know, anyway, that's how you judge a bona fide Guru. That's an objective standard. You know, there may be subjective things, you know, well, I like that Guru's kirtan, that's fine. There's nothing wrong, I'm not criticizing that, you know, plays Mridanga nicely. But we should make sure the objective standards are there before we get into the subjective standards. Does that make sense? Okay, now it's objectively time to take prasadam or whatever. Prabhupada ki jai.
So let's again thank